Hi there everybody, this is David and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit ambitious, if you catch my drift. It's a full countdown of the top 25 best RPGs that have been released in this decade, the 2020s so far. That means everything released from like January 1st, 2020, all the way up through now, present day. Indies, blockbusters, throwbacks, AAAs, even some experiments that worked out way better than expected. But before we do start, don't forget to go ahead and join up my party and level up with me by subscribing, liking, and hyping. Yeah, it helps me out a ton because we've got a lot more RPG adventures to cover for the rest of the year. Thank you so much for all of your support and your help. It means the world to me. And now let's go ahead and dive right on in. Starting at number 25, Ys 9 Monstrum Nox. Adol is out still adventuring, still breaking into towns that he's not supposed to, and now he's turning into like a supernatural vigilante on top of all that. Monstrum Nox gives the series a gothic flair with movement powers that make exploration just a joy. It's fast, flashy, and proof that Falcom's other series do deserve more love. Now transitioning over from one long series, let's look at a standalone entry with number 24, Triangle Strategy. Yeah, the name sucks and it still sounds like some sort of geometry assignment, but don't let that fool you. This here is one of the most intelligent tactical RPGs of the decade. Political intrigue, branching paths, and moral dilemmas that actually make you sweat abound here. It's kind of like Fire Emblem, but with more spreadsheets and fewer tea parties. And speaking of some epic storylines, that brings us over to our next entry, number 23, Trails into Reverie. This here serves as both an epilogue and a bridge, tying together the previous arcs while bridging on over to the future arcs yet to come. It's definitely not for your first entry, but it is for longtime fans. It's like the ultimate Trails buffet. It's overwhelming, satisfying, and just kind of leaves you wanting for more. You know, what's going to be coming up next? And speaking of gorging yourself at a buffet, let's go on down to the farm with number 22, Harvestella. This here answers the question of like, what if Stardew Valley and Secret of Mana had a baby? That's pretty much Harvestella in a nutshell. It's farming by day, dungeon crawling by night, and some surprisingly dark twists hidden along the way. It's a little bit uneven, sure, but it's also one of like the most weirdest charming experiments that Square Enix has dropped in years. Now, here's another experiment, but kind of in a different way, because they took something linear and they made it super open world with number 21, Atelier Yumiya. The Atelier series just refuses to stop, and honestly, good for it! Yumiya continues the cozy alchemy adventures, leaning into what makes the series so special. All those deep crafting systems that also don't make you want to pull your hair out, and some lovable characters who make you smile. Sometimes, it's just about saving your own recipe book instead of saving the entire world. And now let's move on from the medieval era and blast off into space with our next entry, number 20, Star Ocean: The Divine Force. I really did think that the Star Ocean series was pretty much going to die after the abysmal 5th entry. But between the remake of 2 and number 6, Divine Force, Star Ocean is back on the map. With multiple protagonists, a huge galaxy to explore, action-heavy combat, and even flying around the world, there is so much good stuff here. Now, I will be the first to admit, this is not some sort of AAA perfection, but I did thoroughly enjoy my time with it. Now, moving on from some interstellar adventures, let's go back to the SNES era with number 19, Quartet. This here is proof that indie developers sometimes understand classic RPG designs better than the big boys. On the surface, it looks like another pixel throwback, but once you actually deep dive into it, you realize that it's way more ambitious. There are 4 separate storylines that weave together into one huge adventure, each with their own characters and tone before hitting the grand finale. Quartet doesn't just imitate the golden age of RPGs, it earns a spot right alongside them. And speaking of some great characters, let's revisit some old friends with our number 18, Atelier Ryza 3. Gust here was trying their best to squeeze every last bit of charm straight out of Ryza's thighs. This is a huge game, letting you hop between giant maps, and the combat is a step up too, blending real-time and turn-based into something snappy and fun. But it's also surprisingly heartfelt at the same time. This here is the swan song for Ryza and her crew, and it really does feel like a proper send-off. And let's be honest, Ryza basically carried Atelier into mainstream popularity. So this third entry is less of a part 3 and more of like a victory lap. And level 5 can definitely celebrate a victory too, with the number 17, Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time. The 3DS cult classic finally gets a proper sequel. This is part life sim, part RPG, part job juggling chaos. It's the kind of game where from one moment you're like fighting monsters, and then the next moment you're baking bread for hours on end just for fun. This adds some new jobs, new areas, and a story that leans just enough into the fantasy side without losing its cozy vibe. And it's not about just saving the world, instead it's about building a life inside the world. Because sometimes the best RPG adventure is just finding your place in the world. And here's another one that took forever to come out. Number 16, Tales of Arise. Tales fans waited like what, 5 or so years for this one? It felt like forever, and then boom, we finally got it. This is a flashy, stylish entry that for once does not look like a PS3 game. The story is elevated by a stronger presentation than anything that the series has ever seen before. Combat is buttery smooth, chaining arts together with ridiculous combo potential, and it feels like a soft reboot of the series, a way to take Tales into the modern age without losing its soul. This was some pure, unabashed RPG goodness, and so is our next one, number 15, The Romancing Saga 2 Remake. Square's much maligned Saga series has seen a resurgence lately, and now one of the best ones in the series has come back with a glow-up. The non-linear progression, generational mechanics, and great storyline all finally got the polish that they so deserve. It is still niche, but if they keep up remakes like this, then Saga will go mainstream before long, because this here is one of the boldest RPG experiences out there, a game where your choices echo across centuries. Now, if you like strategy with some style too, you'll love the next game on our list, with number 14, the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. This is not your grandpa's Midgar anymore. Rebirth takes the remake trilogy into full open world territory and mixing that nostalgia with brand new twists that will keep everybody guessing, including me. The combat is still kind of like that beautiful blend of action and turn-based, and I love seeing all the characters really fully fleshed out. It hits so hard. And I'm here for all the fan service because it seems to be done right. But now, from one iconic remake, let's move on to a brand new IP with number 13, Metaphor ReFantazio. This is where Atlas said, what if Persona, but fantasy? And honestly, that's all they needed to say. Metaphor feels like Persona finally is breaking free of the high school calendar and instead will treat us like adults by tackling adult problems. The combat blends that press turn system with new tactical twists, and the world just feels so massive. It's like Persona grew up, left Tokyo, and started cosplaying as Final Fantasy, but in the best possible way. And speaking of leaving Japan, let's go into number 12 with Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth. Infinite Wealth is a beast! It takes the turn-based formula that debuted in Ichiban's first adventure and just polishes that to perfection. The game somehow juggles heavy themes about morality and family with some complete nonsense like Persona-style creature collecting and running your own crazy minigames. There's also a great job class system too, and being set in Hawaii gives it a fresh, new vibe, while still finding some time to be one of the most fun, approachable RPGs of the entire decade. And here's another super approachable one, but in a different genre, with number 11, Unicorn Overlord. Vanillaware decided that tactical RPGs needed more muscles and more capes, so Unicorn Overlord delivered. Gorgeous hand-drawn visuals, strategic maps, and a sense of grandeur make every skirmish feel like a saga. This isn't like your typical grid-based strategy game where battles just kind of like take place in some sort of alternate dimension, it seems. Here, everything takes place right in the world map, and I love that. And you know what other kind of maps I love? Massive open world maps, like number 10, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. At this point, Monolith Soft is just kind of like flexing. Massive open zones? Check! A deep, emotional story about two warring nations caught in a cycle of death? Double check. And there's also a class system that lets every single party member swap roles, so you're constantly tinkering around with their builds. But more than that, it's a journey. Equal parts heartbreaking and uplifting, filled with character moments that will stay with you. So if Xenoblade 1 was about discovery, and 2 was about, bombastic anime chaos, 3 feels like the grown-up sibling. Mature, tragic, but still hopeful. And now, for the biggest shock of the decade, Number 9, Chained Echoes. Yeah, one guy made this. Seriously, one guy created an RPG that feels like a time travel straight out of the SNES Golden Age, but with all the modern polish that you'd actually want. This blends Chrono Trigger's pacing with Final Fantasy VI's world building and throws in its own mech battles just because it can. The combat is tight and smart, and the story is surprisingly epic, juggling multiple characters and factions, without collapsing in and upon itself. It is the definition of a passion project, and it shows. So for some old school fans, it feels like coming home. Maybe to liberal, with number 8, Chills in the Sky, First Chapter Remake. It finally happened. The game that kicked off the entire Trails phenomenon, the one that fans have been begging to see updated for years, got its remake, and it's glorious. Estelle and Joshua's story still hits like a truck. This feels like meeting an old friend again, and now it's easier than ever to appreciate how Falcom built the foundation for one of the most beloved RPG sagas ever. And from one foundational game to another, here's a blast from the past, with number 7, Star Ocean, the second story R. This is how you do a remake. Star Ocean 2 was already a cult classic back on the PS1, but this takes it and makes it stand toe-to-toe with today's modern masterpieces. The combat's way smoother, and the story is still as delightful as ever. It's half fantasy, half sci-fi, but all fun. What makes it shine is how it preserves all the branching paths, the private actions, and the party variety. You can replay it like a dozen times and still find new scenes and new combinations. It's not just nostalgia, it is one of the most replayable RPGs ever, brought back to life in style. But next up is the daddy of the HD 2D era, with number 6, Octopath Traveler 2. Yeah, the first Octopath was cool, and I really did enjoy it, but this here stepped it up a notch. The stories are stronger, the characters actually interact, who knew? And the world really does feel interconnected. The combat is still one of the best turn-based systems around, with the break and boost mechanics rewarding smart play every turn. Octopath Traveler 2 is kind of like Square Enix saying, okay, so we nailed the art style in the first one, but now let's really craft a fully fleshed out world to go with it. And just like I thought Star Ocean was, dead in the water, I felt the same thing for this next game with number 5, Final Fantasy Tactics Remaster. One of the best games back on the PS1 finally got its remaster, and it's everything I always wanted. Quality of life upgrades, along with a handful of fixes that just smooth out some of the clunk without ruining all the complexity. Rams' journey throughout Ivalice is just as dramatic, just as gut-punching, and just as political as it was when I first played it back in high school. This is one of those games that defined the tactical RPG genre. So whether you're like a longtime fan or a newcomer, this here is an essential game for any RPG gamer to play. But if you're craving something a little bit lighter and a little bit older, here's another revival that's worth talking about. And that's number 4, Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D Remake. Now the entire Erdrick trilogy is here, and let me tell you, it is surreal seeing these RPGs of my elementary school age being completely reimagined in that gorgeous HD 2D style. Dragon Quest 1 is still simple, but it's still charming. But 2 is really where the adventure starts to feel like a saga, with multiple party members and a new party member, as well as a much bigger world and whole new towns. And speaking of towns, every single one of them now has a purpose, and it really does feel like a fully fleshed out adventure. This here is history preserved, and for newcomers, it is a great way to see where all the JRPGs really did begin, because Dragon Quest 1 birthed them all. So if you want proof though that Square isn't all just about remakes, then look no further than one of the brand new games, number 3, Visions of Mana. It has been forever since the Mana fans have something to cheer about, but Visions of Mana is finally that comeback. This entry takes the spirit of the series, the bright, colorful worlds, the whimsical monsters, and the action-based combat, and it gives it that modern polish that Mana's just been begging for. It is fast, flashy, and still keeps that sense of fairy tale charm that the series is so well known for. It isn't trying to reinvent RPGs, it's just trying to be a really good Mana game, going back to the basics, and that is enough. So for longtime fans like me, This really makes me feel like Square nailed what made Mana so special in the first place. But now, for another game that really holds a special place in my heart, number 2, the Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake. I played this game back on the NES whenever I was in 4th grade whenever I broke my arm. My mother wheeled the TV and the NES into my room from the loft, and the rest is history. It has become one of my absolute favorites of all time, and here it is reborn in that gorgeous HD 2D style. Everything is still so faithful to the original. The world, the class system, the combat, and the lovingly crafted story. But now with modern conveniences and new storyline additions, as well as a new job class. So this feels both timeless and classic at the same time. I mean, Dragon Quest is here, reminding every other RPG series that it is still the great granddaddy of the genre for a reason. You just cannot deny the impact that it has had on the JRPG landscape. And speaking of making a huge impact, let's look at a more modern one with our number 1, Clair Obscur Expedition 33. This is my list, so we all knew that it would really take something special to dethrone the almighty Dragon Quest, but my god, this did just that. Every so often an RPG comes along that feels like it crawled out of nowhere and it just knocks the wind right on out of your sails, and this definitely did take my breath away. It is dripping with atmosphere, and the storyline is full of twists and turns, as well as some cute throwbacks to old classics. And the turn-based combat system feels fresh with all those dodges and its parries. It is definitely engaging. And y'all should have seen my face whenever I first realized that it had a full bona fide world map. I was ecstatic. The story hits you with this creeping sense of dread, but hope at the same time. It's melancholic, but it's not miserable. And it's beautiful, but it's also not shallow. This is one of those generational RPGs that people will look at back and point back to years later and say, yeah, that's whenever this genre really changed and got interesting. But wait, there's more! Octopath Traveler 0 just came out and I could not in good conscience leave it off this list, so we actually have 26 games that we're looking at, because this one isn't just like a good mobile game, it's a good console game. It is basically the version of the Octopath series that has been quietly evolving towards this entire time. Instead of juggling 8 disconnected hero arcs, Zero here gives you a proper main protagonist, a cohesive villain story built around the Rings of Power, and a central hub town of Wishvale that ties together progression, exploration, and narrative in a way that earlier games never did quite manage to do. Combat keeps that iconic break and boost system intact, but shakes things up with 8 character battles built around paired turns and on-the-fly swapping them out, which finally makes a massive cast feel usable instead of ornamental. All the path actions are streamlined, exploration is dramatically improved with a real minimap, the ring gauge adds this really cool limit break system, there's full character creation, no gacha nonsense, great bonuses, and a cool story that actually feels unified instead of fragmented, so I had to put it here on the list. This is the strongest, boldest take on Octopath yet, and easily my favorite in the series. So that's it. The top 25 best RPGs of the 2020s so far. We've got a lot here, some experimental gems, some legendary comebacks, and a couple surprises that nobody saw coming along the way. So what is your favorite RPG of the decade so far? Drop it here in the comments, and don't forget to level up and join my party by subscribing. Until next time, keep questing, keep grinding, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Have a good day.